I have the absolute honor of introducing our keynote speaker today, someone I hold in the highest regard. General VP Malik needs absolutely no introduction, but I'll nonetheless try to do justice to his formidable achievements. General Malik was the Chief of the Indian Army from October 1, 1997 to September 30th, 2000. Concurrently, he was also the Chairman, Chiefs of Staff Committee of India from 1 January 98 till he retired. Since the beginning of his service in June 1959, he has participated in wars with Pakistan and China, commanding units and formations in counter-terrorist and insurgency operations in the Northeast, J&K, and Punjab. He was also involved in military diplomacy with a large number of countries. In 1999, he planned, coordinated, and oversaw the execution of Operation Vijay to successfully defeat Pakistan's attempted intrusion in Kargil and nearby sectors. He has been awarded the Ati Vishwa Seva Medal and the Param Vishwa Seva Medal. Upon retirement, General Malik was nominated as a member of the National Security Advisory Board for 2 terms and founded the Security Studies Institute as part of the Observer Research Foundation. He has authored 2 books, Kargil, From Surprise to Victory, and India's Military Conflicts and Diplomacy, an inside view of decision making. Please welcome, and let us all put our hands together for General Ved Prakash Malik.
Colonel David, Dr. Renuka David, Mr. Shashi Tharoor, Member of Parliament, my ex-colleagues from Operation Vijay, and that includes one journalist also sitting here, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and dear cadets sitting behind. At the outset, I want to thank the chairman of Radiant Group for organizing this conclave. It's indeed something I didn't know much, but to see the kind of activity that you have been having here, great tribute to both you and to your wife. And thank you for asking me to come as a keynote speaker on this particular session. I think I would like to compliment you for one more thing, and that is of becoming an entrepreneur after voluntarily leaving the army, and a very successful one at that. You know, in the armed forces, we know how to take risks with our lives, but we are very shy of taking risks with our money. So here you have somebody who is capable of taking risks with his life as well as with his money. So compliment to you, David. The topic that I have chosen for the talk today is making of grand and military strategy and our lessons from Kargil war. While I had a major role in shaping military strategy, but my role in making of grand strategy was absolute minimal. I have to say that. And why it was so minimal and the advantages, disadvantages of that also I will mention little later. Let me start with the kind of circumstances that we had and the inputs that we had while making the grand strategy at the political level. As you know, the grand strategy in India is made by the Cabinet Committee of Security, headed by the Prime Minister. The first one, I would like to mention Lahore Declaration. That declaration had generated considerable political euphoria after February 99. Political circles believed that Indo-Pakistan relations would improve and cross-border infiltration, which had become more intense earlier, it would cease. And I just want to remind you that during that war period, we had an interim government. It was not an elected government at that time. It was an interim government. Two things I would like to mention here. First is that at that time, our two prime ministers of India and Pakistan, after signing out declaration war, they were now having talks through their interlocutors, Mr. R.K. Mishra from our side and Niaz Naik from the other side. But we did not know. The armed forces did not know anything about it. It was at that level only. The second thing I would like to mention here is that sometime during the end of March, I recall Prime Minister telling me, why don't we stop firing on the line of control? And I told him, I said, sir, it can't be done. So he looked at me questioningly. I said, sir, as long as there are attempts of infiltration from the other side, there is firing from the other side, how can I tell my troops not to fire? They will have to. So those were the circumstances soon after the Lahore Declaration was signed in February 1999. I come to second factor would be international relations. They were not in good shape. We had carried out nuclear weapon tests, and there were very severe sanctions placed on our country at that time. In fact, I would say that USA and India, as far as defense is concerned, they were not even on talking terms. And the same was the case with many other countries at that time. I was to attend my daughter's marriage sometimes in the month of June 99, and I could not go there myself because of the kind of condition that they were. And she got married only with my vice present at that time. So there were many sanctions. In fact, I would say that most of the countries in the West, they considered us, India, as a rogue nation. You will recall the kind of letters that were written, even by President Clinton writing to China about it. Third factor would be intelligence report and assessments. In 1998-99, the focus of all intelligence reports and assessments was on militancy in J&K. Some intelligence bureau reports indicated that some terrorists were being trained in POK with a view to infiltrating them across the LOC. These reports were not area specific. The possibility of a conventional war with Pakistan regular forces was consistently negated. On the other hand, intelligence inputs and assessments reflected a lack of preparedness on Pakistan's part as far as the military conflict is concerned. I can quote a report that we received in March 99. It said, waging a war against India in the immediate future would not seem to be a national decision from the financial point of view, that is talking about Pakistan. Nawaz Sharif's government would be left with little option but to pursue intelligence, other infiltration, and indulge in a proxy war in Jammu and Kashmir as part of an attempt to keep the hardliners subdued. And this is March 99, when already the Pakistani army chief had started infiltration on our side. In fact, the first report from intelligence agencies which came to us talking about preparation for a conventional war on the other side was on 14th June 1999, and by that time we were already into Operation Vijay for a number of days. I want to mention here, recently one journalist wrote an article in which he quoted an intelligence report of 2nd June 98. And I had to criticize him for not speaking the truth in that article. The reason is, I said, firstly, Pervez Musharraf took over the Pakistan Army only in October 98. So how could you think of a war taking place on 2nd June 98? Second, I mentioned that if it was so, then why did we permit our Prime Minister to go to Lahore to sign the declaration? And third, why was I permitted to go to Poland and Czech Republic again in May 99? And incidentally, there is a book written by one Mr. Jarnail Singh, who used to be in the PMO. And he has very categorically written that when Brijesh Mishra, then NSA, asked him to find out, is there any report of Pakistan preparing to wage a war against India? And he has categorically written that he went through all the papers twice, and both times he said no to Brijesh Mishra, there is no such report. So I just want to tell you the kind of intelligence report that we had at that time. On the ground, by mid-May 99, intelligence and ground reports started reporting that jihadis had infiltrated into Batalik, Kargil sectors, Batalik, Kargil and Dras sectors. They were occupying some heights, interfering with movement of convoys on National Highway 1 Alpha, which is from Srinagar through Zojila Pass going to Kargil and beyond. Raksha Mantri George Fernandez, who visited this area on the second week of May 99, was apprised of the situation. However, he was also assured by some of our own officers that the terrorists will be thrown out very soon. And this is the time when Army and the Air Force started working together. The Army sought use of attack helicopters, but CCS, Cabinet Committee of Security, rejected it, stating that the use of air power will escalate and enlarge the conflict dimensions. On my return from Poland and Czech Republic on the 20th of May 99, I visited Udhampur and Srinagar to take stock of the ground situation. By now, our assessment was that Pakistan Army was fully involved in the intrusion, but we had no authentic evidence to indicate the extent of its involvement. The intruders wore jihadi clothes. They conducted themselves as well-trained army personnel. Their count and locations were increasing as we kept getting those reports. They were well on, supported with mortars and artillery. Having occupied dominating heights, they were now interfering effectively with our movements, not only on National Highway 1 Alpha, but also on the smaller tracks going to LOC posts. There had been patrol clashes, but except for one post, Bajrang post, there had been no encounters on or near the posts. None of our posts, in fact, had spotted infiltration routes of the intruders. Again, at that time, I had raised this question in the CCS that, look, I don't think these are jihadis, these are army people from Pakistan Army. And the report that time given by our chairman JIC was, no, these are 70% jihadis and 30% maybe regular army people. I challenged that in front of the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister again asked them to review it. And after a week, they said, no, this is the other way around, 30% jihadis, 70%, these are now regular people. And that I challenged again, and I said, look, it's not possible. And the person involved in giving this decision, he says, इन इंटेलिजेंस वालों की भी तो लाज रखनी है हमने, something to that effect. Again, I am trying to bring, that was the kind of, these are the conditions. I convened a meeting of the Chief of Staff Committee on 23rd May, and I conveyed my assessment and recommendations to all three services, and also told them that we needed to work jointly. And this was unanimously agreed to. Next day, I briefed the Cabinet Committee on Security, at the end of which the grand strategy mandate was given to us. 2 sentences. One was throw them out from our area as early as possible. Second sentence was don't cross the line of control our international border. There was no discussion. There was no written mandate given to us. This is what I was told at the end of that meeting when I addressed the CCS. I must emphasize here that before this, the military was not appraised of Mishra and Niaz's ongoing dialogue or any nuclear aspects, and also not about the crossing the LOCIB at all. There was no discussion whatsoever. It was just one sentence, you will not do this. Restriction or its implications were not discussed with us. One incident I want to mention here, which really gave me a little anxious moment, and that was when the cabinet agreed to accept Sartaj Aziz, the foreign minister of Pakistan, to Delhi for talks. And that day, we had not yet recaptured any of the posts. When I learned about this, so I spoke to Brijesh Mishra and I told him, I said, look, we haven't even started, and how are we accepting somebody to come? He will talk about the ceasefire. And any ceasefire at this time will be to our great disadvantage. So I was quite unhappy about that. And I remember sending a signal to the entire Indian Army that let the diplomats and the politicians do what they want. Our task is clear and we have to do that. I now come to shaping of the military strategy. Mind you, during all this period, a war against Pakistan had not been declared at all, even this thing. In working out our military strategy, some relevant questions that we had to consider, I'm talking of the Chiefs of Army, Navy, and Air Force as member of the Chiefs of Staff Committee. First, we needed much greater forces in the West to prevent Pakistan doing any further damage and to undo present situation. Unless the question that came to our mind was, unless the CCS declares it a war, and we cannot go against the war book, and we cannot move so many formations to the western side. So that was one of the things that came to our mind, and I had to clarify that. How do we carry out a large-scale mobilization of our forces? 2, will the CCS allow conflict escalation if that becomes militarily essential? I had to consider that part also. How will escalation dominance? We were superior in forces. I knew that. We were confident about that. But if you are working on escalation dominance, how will it work in Indo-Pakistan nuclear scenario? In a nuclear scenario, nuclear weapons from both sides had become a big hawa as far as the foreign countries were concerned. And they were again and again talking, how can 2 nuclear nations go to war? That was a big problem that we have. And we were wondering, how will the government handle such an international situation? How soon can we launch an offensive if and when permitted? How will coming monsoon affect our operations? Mind you, we were now talking of May, end of May, and July onwards, we start having rains, and that makes our cross-border operations a little more difficult. Similarly, not only on the ground, but on the air as well as sea. We needed to take stock of our inventories, review urgently our capabilities for defensive as well as offensive operations. Incidentally, at that time, we were all working on all three services were working on bottom line because 4 or 5 years earlier, we had been given no foreign exchange at all to import any weapons. And 80% of our weapons those days came from abroad. So we had to take into account that. Now, on 3rd of June, I remember the Prime Minister had come to Chennai, and here he made a statement. He says, I have told the armed forces not to cross the line of control and international border. So we came back, I met him. I said, sir, please don't make that statement again. And Brijesh Mishra was also walking with us. So he asked me, he says, Kyun? I said, suppose we cannot undo things which are happening in that area, Kargil Dras sector, then I have no alternative except to cross the line of control or I be somewhere. That is the only alternative I have. And when I come with that request to you, what will be your answer? So he kept quiet, didn't say anything. But that very evening, Brijesh Mishra took an interview with one of our TV channels. And there he said, not crossing the line of control or international border holds good today. I don't know about tomorrow. Back to India's joint military strategy. The crux of our military strategy was to adopt an aggressive posture in air, on the seas, and all along the LOC and international border to prevent Pakistan from focusing on Kargil only and to maintain capability to undertake defensive as well as offensive operations. You'll ask me why. Although we were mandated not to cross the line of control, in a dynamic situation like war, one has to consider all possible contingencies. You know, the military cannot be left with something. In that situation, further escalation of the war could not be ruled out either due to Pakistani action, we didn't know what were their intentions, or for us to achieve the given objective. My instructions, therefore, were that army formations should be deployed in such a state of readiness so that at 6 days' notice, we should be able to launch an offensive operations anywhere across the line of control or international border. We have a large number of, those days we had a number of dual task formation who had a task on the north as well as on the western side. So I got all those formations to come to the western sector to be ready to enter Pakistan if required in 6 days. My instructions, therefore, were they should be deployed in such a manner. This deployment was to be achieved with maximum security, minimum disturbance to normal air, rail, and road traffic. We had to move almost all the trains by night, not to be spotted by the Pakistani Army, or Air Force. We decided to abide by the political terms of reference, but keep our military options open. If Pakistan pumped in more troops in Kargil Siachen sector to strengthen its position, or it took initiative elsewhere, we would retaliate and cross the line of control, international border. Also, if we could not evict Pakistan from Kargil by the end of monsoon season, we should be prepared to cross into Pakistan in September or October. So broadly, the military strategy was a military posture all along the western border to prevent Pakistan from reinforcing its forces opposite Kargil. Threaten and maintain pressure on Pakistan throughout land, air, and sea border. Try and create strategic imbalance for Pakistan armed forces. You will recall we had moved better part of our eastern fleet from the Bay of Bengal into Arabian Sea. And by this time, we had started chasing their oil ships coming from Dubai to Karachi. So everybody was ready. Be prepared to launch forces across the line of control at short notice, retain balance on border with China and Bangladesh. On 15th or 16th of June, Brijesh Mishra met the US National Security Advisor, Sandy Berger. I'm just giving you another aspect, what was happening at the same time. He met him in Paris and he told him categorically, India would not be able to continue with its policy of restraint for long. He said that our military forces cannot be kept on leash any longer, and the government of India may have to let them cross the LOC or IB any day. And according to Brijesh Mishra, he told me personally, he said that the US administration took this message quite seriously. And in fact, Sandy Berger told him, please hold horses for some time. I come to now strategic lessons. Kargil war broke out within 2 months of the Prime Ministers of India and Pakistan signing the Lahore Declaration. It proved Admiral J.C. Wiley, a well-known strategist from US, whose first basic assumption in his paper, Military Strategy, a general theory of power, in that he states, despite whatever effort there may be to prevent it, there may be a war. Military history tells us that nations who neglect this historical fact make themselves vulnerable to military surprise and defeat. This assumption, therefore, is a reminder to all political military leaders and strategists to visualize security threats, possibility and likely nature of conflict, and to always remain prepared. Another basic assumption for war planning is that we cannot predict with certainty the pattern of war for which we prepare ourselves. It has seldom been possible to forecast the time, the place, the scope, the intensity, and the general tenor of a conflict. This assumption implies that our security plans should cater for the complete spectrum of conflict. Now, again, in 1971, we were lucky. That was one exception when we could plan and we started preparing ourselves for almost 6 to 8 months before we launched operation. That luxury we did not have in 99 when we were now reacting to a situation. This assumption implies that our security plans should cater for a complete spectrum of conflict. Our military strategies and doctrines, therefore, must be flexible, capable of application in any unforeseen circumstances. And as military history very often tells us, planning for uncertainty is less dangerous than planning for certitude. Some other lessons I want to mention here. There may be remote chances of a full-scale conventional war between two nuclear nations, but as long as there are territory-related disputes, and currently we have not only with China but also with Pakistan, the adversary can indulge in a proxy war, a limited war, or both. And that is what is happening, in fact, if you notice that. A major military challenge we face today is that no loss of territory is acceptable to the public and to the political authority. I remember one defense minister saying that ये जो stone है, ये अगर line of control के इस तरफ है, तो वो हमारा है. We cannot give that stone away to Pakistan. That is the kind of attitude that we have adopted. Absolutely nothing to be given, not an inch to be given to the other side. Now this, therefore, it is essential for us to have credible strategic and tactical intelligence, assessments, and effective surveillance. During 99 war, we did not have adequate surveillance. Here I must add that over-assessment also can often lead to a temptation to deploy more forces along the border or LOC. So we have to be careful of that. Any military operations requires moral high ground. The adversary has to be exposed and deny any moral justification. This needs a comprehensive media and information strategy. During that war, we learned a lot from each other. Media had also no idea. This was the first televised war. And we had also no idea how to handle them, because there was only one road which was leading to Kargil sector. And it was used by civilians as well as the military together. Now, of course, we have learned that as part of our appreciation, media strategy has to be considered in detail. The new strategic environment calls for faster decision making, versatile combat organizations, rapid deployment, and synergy amongst all elements involved in a war effort. This includes the three services and all civilian organizations involved in the national security effort. This is where I say that I wish we had been consulted adequately before the Kargil war took place. In fact, that is a problem which continues, I think, to some extent even today. Any war in future will require close political oversight, no doubt about it, and political civil-military interactions. Therefore, I very strongly believe that it is essential to keep the military leadership in the security and strategic decision-making loop. Right from the time you start getting some intelligence report, the military must be kept in the loop so that they can prepare contingency plans. For us, everything depends on the kind of contingency plans that we make, Army, Navy, and Air Force together. You cannot just give order at the last moment, okay, we are in this situation, now you go and do what I'm now telling you. So this consultation, I think, is required. In conclusion, let me say, Kargil war set yet another example of informed and enlightened cooperation between political leadership, civil services, and the armed forces, backed by the public support. The CCS with relevant executive, this is after the war started, I'm talking of that. The CCS with relevant executive heads met every day. All concerned kept in touch with each other. I met Prime Minister very often, almost every day, sometimes even twice or thrice a day. And that constituted a unique example of security and strategic exercise by India. And I hope that that kind of a thing is converted into SOPs. We do not have to wait for something to happen and then call for the armed forces chiefs. I don't know whether it has happened now. I mean, or is it happening adequately now? My talk today has been on strategic planning and implementation. But it needs to be remembered, however, that tactical actions and implementation of operational plans are more important than strategic planning. I have always believed that implementation is more important than planning. Test of any plan is how it ends, never how it begins. The credit for victory in Kargil, quite deservedly, goes to the bravery and dedication shown on the battlefield by soldiers, young officers, and their leaders, many of whom are sitting here. They were upfront, never ever hesitating to make any sacrifice to uphold the regimental and national pride and dignity. In fact, I can say that whenever I visited them on the front line, they were the ones who raised my morale, not in the South Bloc. Our troops performed superbly, and I still believe that our human capital is superb, much better than many other countries that I have visited in the past. Kargil war in 1999 was not the first time that Pakistan had initiated a war. And we cannot assume that it would be the last time. Every good military would like to be proactive and possess deterrent capabilities. And I hope we have them as early as possible. However, it has also to develop the political and military will and capability to react appropriately. The essence of leadership is in the manner in which we react to restore a leadership, howsoever adverse the circumstances of the battle. And I'm saying that not only for the military leaders, but also for the political leadership. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. We request you to remain on stage for just a moment longer. We have something special for you that we hope that you will like. I'd like to call upon Dr. Renuka David, Colonel David, and Dr. Shashi Tharoor to please do the honors and present General Malik with a token of our appreciation.